My name is Grace Myers. I'm from the Developer Relations team at Wix, and I'll be your host today. Welcome to the webinar. We're so excited to introduce you to the world of Wix Studio, the web creation platform built for agencies and freelancers, where you can deliver exceptional, high-quality sites in the most efficient way. This platform was designed with you in mind, while covering the many layers of creating and managing multiple projects while maintaining high quality. Today, we're going to be meeting the dev environment on Wix Studio with one of our very own product managers, Daniel Orsher, who's here with us today. We'll manage questions and comments a bit differently today so we can get to all of you and answer all of your questions. We have two Q&A professionals here with us today, and they'll reply to you while Daniel is presenting. So this is how it's going to play out. Questions. If you have any questions today throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. The Q&A box is different than the chat box, so I just want to make sure that you know where it is. We'll be able to address your questions at the end of the presentation, and there will be people answering it throughout. Comments. If you have any general comments, as you can see in the chat here, feel free to use the chat box for general comments. Be sure to click on all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see what you have to say. And this session will be recorded, and it will be available afterward for you to watch and recap if you need. And this is just a small glimpse into the Wix Studio world. So anything we cover today, you'll find tons more information and learning resources in our academy, like the Wix Studio Essentials course, how-to tutorials, and other webinars at wix.com/studio/academy. And if you haven't already, please join our Wix Studio forum. We've got UX people, designers, developers, and product managers in the forum that are actively answering questions. There's a lot of lively discussion and sharing in there, so sign up to join those conversations. And that's all for me. I will hand it over to Daniel.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Meet the Dev Environment in Wix Studio webinar. I'm very excited to have the privilege of speaking to you today. My name is Daniel, and I'm a product manager at Wix. I've been working with code for most of my adult life, once as a developer and now as a product manager. In the last 2 years, my mission has been to make the developer experience at Wix Velo as good as it can be. And today, I'm here to talk to you about the dev environments in Wix Studio, which have gone through some significant changes compared to Velo and the classic editor and in Editor X. What we'll cover today is an overview of the new developer experience, namely the code panel and the Wix IDE. Then Seed to Action, we'll go through most of the functionality that's available and the differences between the experience in Classic or Editor X and Studio, and then cover some common questions and leave time for questions from the webinar participants. So with Wix Studio, we split the experience of development into two separate environments. One is the code panel that's used for simple front-end code, and another is the Wix IDE, which is Visual Studio Code based for any advanced use case or complex projects. The code panel is very similar to the experience you know from Velo today, while Wix IDE opens in a separate tab and offers all of the tools and capabilities that Visual Studio has to offer integrated in the Wix environment. To access the code panel, you click the curly brackets button here. We'll do a demo shortly. And it includes an in-context code editor that you can use while working on your site. You can edit page code, that's JavaScript code that's running client-side and relating to the current page that you are on. You can edit global code, which runs on every page. You can edit CSS, which is a new capability we've added. And you can edit properties for different elements and create interactions using the properties panel. The Wix IDE can be opened from within the code panel, either from here or I'll show another entry point later. It's based on Visual Studio Code online. it opens in a separate tab, so you can work on two screens, for example, one with the editor open, one with the IDE. It allows you to view and edit front-end code as well as back-end and public code. To publish your site, you still need to go to the Studio editor and publish from there. And another thing is it allows you to collaborate concurrently either with designers or with other coders. So compared to the classic Velo, it allows you to work with designers, and compared to Wix Editor X, you can now work with more than one developer on the same site at the same time. So without further ado, let's look at the code panel. So when you start a new Wix Studio site, you can click the curly brackets. And once you click Start Coding, it adds Velo to your site. And allows you to start editing code right away. And let's go through all the different sections and their differences. One thing you can see that's already different is it's accessible from here and not from the top with dev mode on. And the code appears vertically and not horizontally. This allows you to look or see multiple lines at the same time while working with the stage. There's the properties panel, which corresponds to whichever element you select on the stage. I would like to apologize for my computer being a little slow. But let's select something on the stage. So I selected the section, and here there are the properties of hidden and collapsed, and you can add code for different events on mouse in, on mouse out. For buttons, you also have the on click. And right now I am on the home page and viewing the page code of the home page, meaning that this code runs whenever the home page is loaded. Let me switch to another site that might be a little more interesting visually. And also has more than one page. So if I switch between pages here, it's going to load the code for the other page, the another page. Whereas global code edits the master page, which is JavaScript code that runs on every page on your site. With CSS, you can edit the global styles of all the elements and all the types of elements that you have on your site. And let me go back to the home page that has some more interesting elements maybe. And I will add a button. Just to show how the CSS of a button can be changed. Let's go quick add. So when I change the CSS is not corresponding to any page. This is global, similar to the global code. And if I change the style of a button, it's going to, I need to start coding. it's going to apply to all the buttons on the site, no matter on which page they are. And in this case, the CSS applies a red color to the button. We can apply a blue color to the button. And you can see that any change I make here is reflected directly on the stage where you are editing the site. And this applies to many of the static properties of CSS. But if you want to do things like animation, that's not going to appear on the stage. Otherwise, it will be very cluttered. And you can view it when you either publish the site or preview it. So here I did a preview. We can see that the button color is blue, as we saw on the stage. And I'll just copy some more sophisticated CSS code to expand the button on hover. Also setting its size and color a little differently. And preview it again. Okay, it's interactive. And now when I hover over the button, it applies the custom CSS. If you want to set CSS for particular elements or particular pages and not for all the buttons on your site, for example, you can create a custom CSS class. Let's say we'll call it a Start Now button. Now the Start Now button custom class has been created and is applied to this specific button. So if I create another one, and then change the CSS of, oh, wait a second, this CSS is for every button. Let's make this the Start Now button. This one as well, start. Maybe I made it penalties. Yep. Should be camel case. So now the green only applies to this Start Now button custom class. And if I want to change the global color of buttons to red, this will again apply to all the buttons on the site. And because I have a background color here as well, this one does not seem to be overriding it. Maybe it goes according to the order in which it appears. Seems like it is. All right, so much for CSS. You can do a lot with the CSS. Any animation, anything you can find on the web that you don't have out of the box for Wix, you can add using CSS. Now, the rest of the sections here in the code panel are backend code, which is an entry point to the other web environment, the Wix IDE that I'm going to be talking about soon. Databases, which is similar, very similar to the CMS tab you have, only Here you can also connect external collections and view the schema. Packages and apps, you can install NPMs and consume them either from the front-end page code, global code, or in the Wix IDE. You can use Velo packages, which were created by Wix, that make working with some integrations easier, like Twilio and Google Sheets and some other pre-packaged software. Let's close this. You can create your own custom apps with Wixbox. And custom extensions is the entry point to SPIs, which allow you to customize the behavior of Wix and create custom functionality for things like shipping rates, payments, additional fees, etc. Finally, if you want to connect your site to GitHub and use any local IDE, this is the entry point, and you can connect your site to GitHub. This is basically the third option you have as a developer working on any IDE. I'm not going to be going deep into the GitHub integration, but it's definitely worth checking out if you are an advanced professional developer and you want to have version controls. Yes. So much for the code panel for now. What you don't have here is backend code and public code, which was available in Velo Classic Editor and Editor X. And to edit backend code and for any advanced functionality, we have the new Wix IDE. That's an online IDE environment, again, based on Visual Studio Code. Here you can view all your project, all the files that are available on the site, both front-end and back-end, as well as the CSS file. And you have all the functionality that VS Code has to offer, like split screen, go to definition, and we have the AI assistant, which I will go into in a second. So what we have now is a separate tab with the Wix IDE open and the site we have here. If I want to add page code, for example, this is the home page. And let's say I want to create some interaction with a button, with this Start Now button. The button ID is button 2. Let's do $W is the way that we can access the elements that we have on the page. It's the API, the Velo API. And let's add an on-click event handler. So I added a dynamic event handler for the on-click of this button. And if I preview the site, wait a second for it to become interactive. I'm sorry, this is my computer acting up a little bit. Let's click this. We have the console log of demo. Now, any change you make here in the Wix IDE is auto-saved by default and synced to the unpublished version of your site. And as long as you have preview open, whenever you make a change to the code, once this is saved and the preview gets notified that there was a change in the code, the latest version of the code is loaded and run. So if I click the button now, it's going to say demo exclamation mark. And this means that if you're not working on the same screen like I'm demoing, but rather on two screens, you can have one screen with the preview, another with the Wix IDE, and constantly develop and get a fast feedback cycle from what you're doing. Let me go into the project structure that we have here in Wix IDE. We have this .wix library that includes two libraries. One is docs, which explains how to use the backend, CSS, pages, public, and SPI. And you have the types. That is mostly used internally by Wix to give autocomplete and IntelliSense for elements that you have on the site. You're not supposed to make any changes here, but if you do, it's not going to break your site. Just make sure not to add code here, because anything you change here under the .wix is not going to be persistent. This is a library that's used for reference, basically. We decided to keep the types available and not hidden in case anyone wants to look into the internals of how things work. But if you don't want to, then you just don't need to worry about it. Don't open the .wix types. We also have a global README that explains the Wix IDE and everything I'm going through here. And then we have the most important folder, which is the SRC. Under SRC, we have page code, backend code, public code, and styles. Page code is similar to what exists in the regular Velo, that you can also edit. You can also edit the same page code in the code panel, but not at the same time. And this is another change that we've made. Basically, if Wix IDE is open for your any site, then the code is read-only in the code panel. And if you or someone else wants to also edit the code, that can only be done in Wix IDE. However, it can be done by multiple developers at the same time. So you can work on either different code files or even the same code file at the same time. Now, pages correspond to the pages that I have on my site. So here I have two pages, and under pages I have home.c1dmp, new page.lz44m, and the master page, which corresponds to the global code. This ID after the page name is used by Wix to make the connection between the code file and the page on your site. Please do not change the name of page files from the IDE. If you want to make a change to the page name, for example, you want to change the new page to new page 2, you can do this from the editor and not from the Wix IDE. Now, I cannot say that having this ID is the most comfortable and user-friendly option, and we're looking to change that. So let's rename another page and see that it also changes in the Wix IDE. So now this is called another page 2, and any code is saved. So also let's add some button here. what I want to show now is that we get autocomplete for the elements that we have on the page in the IDE. So here we have button 1 in this another page. And if I try to select the elements, then I have the button 1. You can notice that there's also an indication for the last time that there was a sync between the IDE and the site. In case the autocomplete seems to be missing one of your changes, you can always click this, and this will trigger a sync with the site. So under pages, you have a page file for every code file for every page. Under backend, you can create backend web modules. This is another change we've made. Web modules used to be .jsw. Now we have a new annotation, which is web.js. You can definitely learn more about here. The reason we made this change from .jsw to web.js, there are basically a few reasons. One is JSW is not a standard suffix for code files. And another is we wanted to make the definition of web modules code first. So there's no magic behind the scenes. What you have in your code is what you have, and is what runs. And also, web modules always had permissions, but it seems that very few of our users were aware of this option. And now permissions is something that you explicitly define for any web method that you have. So I do want to demo this as well. Just loading code snippet for myself. And if you want to create a web module, you create a new file under src backend. Module.web.js. We import permissions and web method from Wix web module. I think the quotes were wrong. Okay. And let's say I want to create a multiply function. Now, when I define web methods, these are methods that can be accessed from the front end. And whenever you run something in the backend that can be accessed from the front end, you want to define who can run it, because front end code is exposed to any site visitor. So when you define a web method, you can define whether it can be run by a site admin, anyone, which is the default, or a site member. Whenever working with databases and running code that suppresses authentication, especially, you might want to set permissions different from anyone. But for now, let's stick with anyone. And the second parameter is the anonymous function. It's going to be run when we call the multiply web module. To consume it, let's consume it from home. And have a bit of imports. adding parentheses, and maybe instead of console log demo, let's run the multiply function, or let's run it anyway, regardless of the one click. So multiplying and then console logging the product. Preview our site. And I think I changed this in home, and I'm previewing another page. So let's preview home. And web module was run in the backend, was called from the front end asynchronously, and we logged the result of 4 times 5. Silly example, but let's have a nicer example when we show the Wix AI assistant. So this is the backend. We have web modules. You can create as you could previously with Velo in Classic and EditorX, HTTP functions, job scheduler, data hooks, event hooks, and what else? And routers as well. Under backend, you can also organize your code in any way with folders. Under pages, please keep the existing flat structure. Public is code that you can access both from backend or pages. You can create utility functions or anything you need. And styles is the global CSS. Like the .wix, jsconfig.json is not something you should worry about or try to change. Now, another exciting thing we have is the Wix AI assistant. That allows you to create code using a prompt similar to ChatGPT, only that it gives you code that's relevant for Wix. You can fix your code or troubleshoot your code. For example, I'm going to show this in a minute, or look up documentation like how do I access local storage in Wix. Let's start with fix my code. It's a little simpler. Just do something like a simple syntax error. Remove this parentheses. I can mark the code and also right-click it and ask the Wix AI assistant to fix this code. Tell me about any errors. Syntax error. And it says, as a syntax error due to incorrect usage of console log, also provides with an alternative. If I click insert, basically replaces my non-working code with one that has this missing parentheses. It also explains the problem. Let's do something a little more interesting, like ask the AI assistant to generate code for showing the user the last page that they visited. So generate code to show the user Takes a bit of time. And I'll use this moment to also mention that we are collecting feedback on everything. So this is a new product that is released with Studio, and we are very open to hearing from the community and are very eager to make changes so that the experience can be improved. So let's see what the AI assistant said. Basically, it's suggested to use the refer Wix window front end. Okay, let's see if this works. Copy this. And let's put it in home. Yeah, let's put it in home. Using Wix window. And it's console logging the previous page. So let's publish the site so that we have the refer and not be only in preview. No, it's actually already showing it in preview. So the previous page URL is, and this includes everything we see here at the top. So I would say that you can use this without knowing, without being a professional coder, but to best use it, you should have some idea of what it's going to do and be able to review it so that you know what code you are adding to your site. Having said that, it can really accelerate how fast you develop your sites and save you time going to the reference, to the API reference, or trying things and doing a sort of trial and error approach. Okay, so back to the code. Anything else we should mention here? Maybe just the concurrency, that if you are working with multiple users, then the code is going to be changed with a delay of a few seconds, and you're going to see the changes of anyone else who edited it. And if anyone on your site has Wix IDE open, then you cannot edit the code from the code panel to prevent corruption to your site. Apologies for my slow computer. Okay. So a few other things worth knowing. Where does GitHub fit into this? GitHub does not work in tandem with the Wix Online IDE. You can use either, but not at the same time. If you want to connect your site to GitHub, you can do this, but the Wix IDE will not work. And if Wix IDE is working, you should close it before connecting to GitHub. About code versioning and site history, when your site is not connected to GitHub, you can view the site revision as you previously could and revert to an existing revision that you had, depending on how often you saved your site and the site saves. But if you need or want code versioning, then the way to go is connect your site to GitHub. Setting permissions for web modules, I showed it before. It is defined explicitly in the web method definition, and you can set it to anyone, admin or site member. what happens to my existing sites is a question we often get. And for now, the answer for Velo is the same as for Studio. None of your sites are going to be automatically migrated. And definitely for JSW, we're going to continue supporting it. And when you create new sites on Studio, then you can access the code panel and the Wix ID. So top takeaways from this is you have the code panel for simple use cases. You can access page code, CSS, global code, anything that requires simple interactions with the stage in context with a particular page that you're on or for every page on your site. Whereas for any advanced use case, the Wix IDE provides a professional environment to build complex projects with go-to definitions, problem tabs, and all the tools that developers expect and should have while working on professional website. Another point is Velo itself has not changed. APIs remain the same. It's where you write your code that changed, and that you can always switch back from the code panel to the Wix IDE and close the Wix IDE and go to the code panel or go from the code panel to Wix IDE. It's only that backend code and public code can only be accessed using the Wix IDE. So, time for questions, if there are any.
All right. Thank you so much, Daniel, for sharing more about the dev environment in Wix Studio. That was awesome. We are going to dive into some of our top questions. So let's go ahead and get started. The first question that we have, Daniel, is, will I be able to use NPM packages?
Definitely. You can use practically soon, you'll be able to use any NPM. For now, you can use any NPM that's been pre-approved by Wix, but that is going to change very soon. To install it, you need to go to the packages and apps and install it here. And then you can consume it either in the code panel or in Wix IDE. Currently, you are going to get linter errors for NPMs, so you will have squiggly red lines when using it, but when you preview it or when you publish your code, it's going to work. And we are working to improve this and change this.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, the second question we have is, should I use .jsw or web.js?
So for any new project, we recommend using the new .web.js. Since JSW is the old notation, we're going to keep supporting it. It's going to work. None of if you have a site using JSW, or even if you add JSW now to your site, it's not going to break. But the new notation allows you to explicitly define permissions, and we highly recommend using it. It's also going to have better autocomplete and IntelliSense.
Great. Okay, next question. How can I test my backend code?
Good question. So with Velo, you had the option to run backend code using functional testing, this little play arrow. And with Studio, we don't offer this yet. We are working to add it, but for now, you're going to need to use preview or to publish your site and use console log or similar.
Okay, good to know. And next question. Why is the code panel vertical and not like it used to be?
Oh, that's a question we often get asked. There are a few reasons why we moved it from the bottom horizontal bar to the side vertical bar. One is that many of our users want to see multiple lines of code at the same time, and more than 99% 9% of code lines don't exceed this width. Another is that this is the standard for many similar products to Velo or to Wix Code, basically. And yeah, so that's fine. But we are definitely hearing feedback, and we are looking to make the experience a little better. Some have said that they still have some longer lines, and so we might change the width, or we want to be responsive to the feedback and make the experience better again.
Makes sense. Sounds good. Next question. Will I be able to write backend or public code in the code editor?
Oh, so no, that is one of the biggest differences between Velo as it existed and coding in Wix Studio. Backend and public code is only accessible in the Wix IDE. And the reason for this is that we consider them to be advanced use cases that also require more advanced functionality, more advanced environment with more tools. So the Wix IDE is the environment for developers and to write any code that exceeds the basic functionality of frontend. And that's where we want to have all of the advanced capabilities, basically.
Next question. What functionality will be removed from the previous Wix editor concerning the coding aspect, and what will be added?
What will be removed? So the things that were removed are the public and backend, and they, for now, are not planned on being reintroduced into the code panel. And the functional testing for backend is temporarily removed, but we are working to bring it back in the Wix IDE.
Sounds good. The next question is, what are the primary advantages or differences in using Wix Studio's IDE as opposed to what we use now, Editor X Dev Mode?
So the main differences are having a dev environment that includes much more functionality and many more tools than were previously available in Velo. Any changes made in the standard professional IDEs is going to also be reflected in our Wix IDE. And you can work concurrently at the same time, multiple users. We added the CSS capability, and you can work on two different screens at the same time, using the preview with the hot reload.
Okay, we have a few more questions left. The next question is, can we code for a particular breakpoint?
So, 1 second. Coding for a particular breakpoint is not available, but you can use some library. Give me just a second. You can use the Wix window front end. It has a property that tells you basically the height and width of the view pane. One second, I'm loading it. So it's Wix window frontend dot get bounding rect. You import it from Wix window frontend, And then you can adjust your functionality according to the width and height of the viewport.
Okay, next question. What are the new features we might see in the future?
So we are planning a number of improvements to the AI assistant, one of them being a faster response rate. Another is the functional testing, so that you can trigger backend functions and debug in the Wix IDE. We are planning a number of Wix IDE extensions that will add more things from the Wix ecosystem into the Wix IDE, like databases and layers panel, maybe preview. We have a lot of ideas and much more coming. The Wix IDE is going to be something that we are expanding in Wix Studio, and we hope to make it an amazing developer environment.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we can get to for today. If you have any further questions that you didn't feel we were answered today, feel free to go to the new Wix Studio forum and join the Wix Studio Discord community and ask away there. Our product managers will be more than happy to help you out, and they're really active in both. And of course, our Academy is always there as a resource for you to get more information. The recording of this webinar will be uploaded to our Academy and our YouTube channel for you to watch later. If you have any feedback from today, please let us know in the feedback form. It will be sent in the chat briefly. There it is. And thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Daniel, for an awesome presentation. It's very enlightening. I hope you all got your questions answered and learned more today.
Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone.